The Simpson Desert, Kakadu, Cape York, they're all big Aussie adventures. But the one we're embarking on today is even bigger. We're on the search for the centre of Australia. Now that may seem like a fairly easy task. You plot it on a map, head off, visit the place and say you've been there, except it's a little bit more confusing than that. And we're going to try and find each one. While calculated differently, all fall within the Northern Territory, although two of them do get very close to the South Australian border. Our weapon of choice for this trip is the first ute from a luxury brand, the Mercedes-Benz X-Class. X marks the spot. We're in the X250d Power, so you get all the fruit, or at least most of the fruit, except that this one's got more fruit thrown on top. We're talking leather seats, 19-inch alloy wheels, which we could probably do without in this sort of terrain, sports bar on the back, those sorts of things.
Our first two centre punch targets are pretty close together. One is the centre of gravity method, which uses 50,000 equally weighted points around the coastline to determine where the centre is. The next is the furthest point from the coastline, effectively the centre of the largest circle you can draw within mainland Australia.
Well, we're heading towards what is the most inaccessible centres of Australia. The only problem is we've had a bit of an issue, flat tyre. The roads are pretty good, long, straight, flat, relatively high speeds, but occasionally you can just cop a rock in the wrong place, which is what's happened here. We got the warning on the tyre pressure monitoring system, which is awesome on these cars to have that sort of thing. They should be standard, but I don't know if there's much hope of fixing that. Well, this one is proving a little bit more elusive. According to our GPS, it's roughly 20-30 k's in that direction. At the moment, we're about 200 kilometres west of Alice Springs. The challenge is actually getting to it. Even the most detailed maps don't have a road going out to it. We're sort of looking in this area here, just south of Lake Lewis.
There's a trick to finding this spot, and the one very close to it. Both are on leasehold land, Derwent Station. So best to touch base with them for approval before you head off, and to get some details on how to find the two centres once you're there.
You'd think that all those centre points might be vaguely in the same area, but the distance between one and the other can be in excess of 400 kilometres. So we've got lots of driving ahead of us. Now this next point we're looking at is the median point. So basically you take the extremes of latitude and longitude, so the furthest north, the furthest south, the furthest east, the furthest west, and you look for the middle point in each of those, and that is exactly where we're heading now. It turns out this point isn't far off the Stuart Highway, the main northwest drag between Darwin and Adelaide. So with any luck, it'll be just up here. So that's a slight issue then. We've hit a private road, a station road, where you can't obviously really go. According to our GPS, the point we're looking for is about 2.7 kilometres that way. So I'm going to call it maybe on the top of that hill or a fraction over it.
This is another one where some research and pre-planning can make all the difference. The point is again on private land, this time Orange Creek Station. So it's time to hit the phones again.
Well, this one's a little bit easier to spot. It's the Johnston Geodetic Centre of Australia. It was set up in 1965. The government used it to then measure distances to various points around the country. So a fairly significant marker. You can only just see it from the road if you know where you're looking. We had our GPS working to try and figure it out. It's actually on a private station, so we had to ask permission to get here. But either way, pretty cool to see.
It's on Mount Kavanagh Station, so you'll need to ask permission to access it. Or from the Stuart Highway, you can catch a glimpse of the cairn way up on the hill. You won't be driving all the way to this one though.
By the time we hit those 4 points, we will have touched on pretty much every terrain Australia can throw at it. We're going to be doing some rocks and crawling, we're going to be doing sand, we're going to be doing fast flowing dirt roads, and of course freeways, so a bit of everything.
The X-Class is certainly comfortable. The front seats are win and the cabin relatively quiet. That makes a big difference when you're doing big Ks like this. It's also relatively fuel efficient. The Nissan engine under the bonnet not overloaded with grunt, but drivable and easy to live with. From our last point, we're heading east towards the small community of Fink. The red dirt roads are well maintained and there's even a well marked sign to the centre. This one is certainly easy to find.
And here it is, Lamberts Centre. This is the one I've most been looking forward to seeing. It's the geographical centre of Australia. So you imagine you've got a cardboard cutout of the country. You want to put a string through it and make it hang flat. We are at that point. Our last X on the spot.
This is the most obvious of the 5 centre points, the one that's on the maps and the most recent to be nominated as the centre of Australia. But there's a catch. You see, Geoscience Australia, the government department responsible for these centre points, says that officially there is no centre of Australia. The reasoning? Well, their website states that there are many complex but equally valid methods that can determine possible centres of a large, irregularly shaped area, especially one that is curved by the Earth's surface. Well, that's a curveball we weren't expecting. So, over to you, 4x4 adventurers.